The most famous rule in business is also the most misunderstood one. The customer is always right. You've heard it 1,000 times, but I think that's wrong. And today I'm going to tell you not just why I think it's wrong, but where it came from and why it doesn't mean what people think it means. And then I'm also going to tell you the rule I use instead, one that saved my business more times than I can count. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Locally Owned. And I want to let you know that, all week long, I spend my time in conversations with Main Street business owners. And I also spend a lot of time on my computer doing everything from email to spreadsheets. But this right here, talking to you, this is one of my favorite parts of the week. And let me tell you why. Because I can talk and you never interrupt me. You just listen. You don't say much, but no, I'm just kidding. It's my favorite time because I get to spend it talking with you. And you really mean a lot to me. And I mean that. I appreciate every one of my listeners because you're spending time with me listening to the show. And you're the reason that we're ranked number 8 on Million Podcasts list of the top 100 small business podcasts in the U.S. That blows me away. Million Podcasts is a searchable database of 2.7 million podcasts built for PR, marketing, and guest booking. And that ranking, when I found out we were ranked number 8, I wasn't chasing it. I didn't even think we were on the radar. But I'll admit, I'm blown away by it. And it makes me happy. But here's why. Because what it really means is that this show that interviews small local business owners is something that people want to listen to. And the work that I'm doing it matters. People are listening to this show, and that means a lot to me because I don't make a dime from this show. I don't make anything. But I feel privileged and honored to be able to do this. It lets me meet hardworking business owners and learn about their journey, and then I get to share their story with the world, and that really is an honor. And today my guest had something come up, so we weren't able to record his episode. But after doing research on his company, a 4th-generation family-owned business, I got to tell you, I am really excited to share that story with you. It's going to be coming in a few weeks. I promise you, you're going to get Luke's story, but in the meantime, I realized there's a story right in front of me. There's an episode right here that I want to talk about. Here's why I think you're going to like this story. What I wanted to talk about today has already been the topic of the week among business owners. Like I said, I spend my time in conversations with business owners, local business owners, and this week a friend of mine posed this question that I think really struck a nerve with a lot of us. She asked a group of us, what's a rule in business that you actually disagree with? And I thought about it, and here's what I said. The rule that the customer is always right. I don't agree with it. I understand the idea behind it, that arguing with customers and trying to win that argument, it's usually going to do more harm than good. But blindly giving customers whatever they demand, that creates a different problem. It basically teaches difficult customers that they can get their way and get whatever they want just by making enough noise. And one of my rules as a business owner was this. I had this policy and this way of dealing with customers when they weren't happy, and I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to unpack it for you in a little bit, but it was basically this, that when a customer was upset about something, I'd tell them I would talk to the employee and then call them back the same day. That gave the customer some cooling off time, and more often than not, the facts had a way of revealing themselves in that 2 to 4 hour window that I took to talk to the technician, find out his side of the story. But it also told my technicians or my employees that I trust them, that I want to hear them out, because what we would do is we would then decide how to handle it together. And that goes a long way. And here's the irony of this is that the best customers, they don't make demands. Even when we've made a mistake, they're usually extremely respectful and very reluctant to get anybody in trouble. They're not looking for something for free. They're just they're actually looking out for my best interest. They want to let me know about a problem because they know I care about my business and that they want to make sure I know about this because they know that it's going to help me improve the business. The customers most determined to get something for nothing, they were never my best customers or anybody's best customers, really. So I think there's a better rule, and the rule is that right is always right. Treat every customer with respect, listen carefully to what they say, but investigate and make things right when you've actually made a mistake. So I got curious as to where the idea that the customer is always right came from. And I did a little bit of investigating. And as your host, I want to bring you a great show. And I thought that this was worth talking about on the show. So here's what I found, is that the phrase, it wasn't born in an era when customers were spoiled. It was born in an era when customers were actually cheated routinely. So you got to picture what shopping was like back in the 1800s. And it's the late 1800s. Stores often had no return policy, no guarantee. The quality of the goods was inconsistent at best, and there weren't even prices posted back then. So there was this prevailing attitude of buyer beware. In other words, if you bought something and it was defective, it was pretty much going to be your problem. Now, that's hard for us to imagine today because it's not like that at all at any retail store you go to, but that was the norm. And so a few retailers changed that, and one that's noted the most is Marshall Field. Nobody knows the exact words that were used at first to flip this thing around, but by 1905, newspapers were already describing Marshall Field's business philosophy as the customer is always right. And what they meant by that was something closer to this. If a customer complains, don't assume that they're trying to cheat you. Assume that they're telling you the truth until you know otherwise. And that was revolutionary because instead of protecting the store from the customer, they were protecting the customer from the store. What happened is customers flocked to these stores because they knew they're not going to be dismissed or treated like a nuisance or talked down to because all the power lied with the retailer and not with the customer. Now, at its core, this was a marketing strategy. And it makes sense once you remember that at the time, there were no guarantees, no consistent quality, no return policy. The customer bore all the risk. And so what these guys did was they flipped that, and now the store is taking on all the risk instead. And taking the risk out of buying from you is still one of the best marketing strategies today. When we hear that phrase today, we think, right or wrong, the customer gets whatever they demand. But that's not really what Fields was after. As a matter of fact, like I said, it was a marketing strategy. But if you've been in business for any length of time, you'll undoubtedly have had moments where you thought, you know what? The customer is not always right. I don't think they're right in this situation. Things are going to come up where you begin to sense that. But don't miss the point that Field was making, because what he was doing was he was trying to make customers feel safe in doing business with him. To know that everyone is going to be heard, treated fairly, taken seriously. And being heard and taken seriously are a completely different thing from giving in to whatever emotional demands that the customer has. He was building a place where customers could let their guard down and see that the store owner was actually on their side. Because once a customer is emotional and making demands, you're no longer making things right. You're just doing damage control. And I think everybody that goes into business, we all learn this the hard way. I did. In my service company, I had technicians who went into clients' homes to do the work. We had a training program. We had policies and procedures in place. We ran background checks. We created a structure so that when the work was done in a customer's home and it was done unsupervised, the level of quality would be consistent. And so in the early days, when I was still figuring things out, I fully bought into the customer's always right. So if somebody called claiming that one of my guys broke something or did something he wasn't supposed to, or they weren't happy with the work, because I was so bought in, I'd ask them what they felt like I needed to do to make it right. Now, I was giving them all the power over my own company policies at that point, but I didn't realize that. I was a new business owner. But I told them, my policy is that I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. So one day, I get this call, and a client claimed that my guy chipped her end table. And it could be possible, but the way she described it, it sounded a little funny. But my policy being, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it right, I asked her, I said, okay, I'm very sorry about this. Tell me what it'll take to make this right for you. And so she began to tell me that she wanted me to buy her a new table. She wanted me to let her keep the old one, refund her money for the work we did, and give her a year's worth of free service. And that just felt extreme. I felt like I was getting robbed, not that this customer was taking advantage of me. They weren't grateful for me going above and beyond and making the situation right. They were taking advantage of me. So that's when I decided I got to think through this and create something better than I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. And so that's when I came up with the rule that I gave my friend. When a customer's upset, I tell them I'll talk to the employee and call them back that same day. Now, there's the old saying that there are three sides to every story: his, hers, and the truth. And I think the sentiment of that applies here. We had a policy that if a technician was in a client's home and damaged anything, or anything went wrong, or the client wasn't happy in any way, he needed to call the office immediately. So in other words, if he broke something, even before telling the client he broke it, he would call the office and say, hey, I just want to let you guys know I'm in Miss Jones' house. I broke a window. Just want to let you know I'm going to go talk to her now. Then he would go get Miss Jones. And that one rule alone prevented multiple versions of the truth. So if a client called upset about something and we hadn't already heard from the technician about it, that told us something's a little bit off here. Now, I also learned that when someone's genuinely upset, one of the best ways to bring them down emotionally is to empathize with them first. So if they told me something like, your guys scratched my hardwood floor and they left without saying a word, I would be like, oh man, that's horrible. I can't believe that. I can understand why you're upset. I'd be upset too if somebody came into my home, scratched my floor, and then just left. Yeah, I'd have a problem with that. So tell me what happened. And then I would say, hey, can you hold on for a second? And I would put them on hold for 30 seconds, a minute at the most, and give them time because they are transitioning. They're in this period where they're bowed up, like I'm going to have to fight to get what I want, to, oh, this guy's on my side. So I just switched things around. I want to give them a few seconds to adjust to that. And when most customers see that you're not going to fight them, they bring it down. They come down from a 9 to a 5 emotionally and how certain they are about the facts. And so I just say, okay, now tell me what happened. And then I just let them talk. I let them tell their side. I don't commit to anything or take any sides, but I just let them know that, yeah, if somebody did that to me, I'd feel the same way, oh man, that must feel horrible. And then I tell them about our policy and that the technician should have called and that he's usually great about it. And, I'm not sure why he didn't call, but let me find out. Bill is always really good about calling and if anything goes wrong. So I'll find out what happened and I'll call you back before the day ends. From there, it really depends on what my technician tells me. If his story is completely different from the client's, then he and I figure out a game plan together and we figure out how to make things right. If he's got a reasonable explanation why he didn't call and his story lines up with the client's, well, we take a different route. But either way, the technician is a part of the process. They're never left out. Often when I call back, though, one of two things happens. Most of the time, it's and they might even call me before I call them back with this. They'll say something like, Dave, I am so sorry. I talked to my husband. He said he was moving things out of the way before you guys got there, and he scratched the floor. I'm so sorry. With good clients, that happens more often than you'd think. Other times, they stick to their story. And if it is really just an issue with the work, we set up a time to go back out and fix it. Usually, if they're a good client who just had a bad experience and they weren't happy with the work, because sometimes things go wrong and our work is not what we want it to be either, they're relieved that we're coming back out to make it right. They're not even thinking that they should get a discount or that they should get their money back. They just want it made right. But if what they actually want is their money back, they'll come up with reasons to not let us come back out there and make it right. They'll say, oh, well, we already had another company come and fix it. Or we decided we're going to go a different route, just refund our money. And if you tell them that's not your policy, then they start bargaining for a partial refund. And that's usually when you know that this was planned from the beginning. And I learned not to be afraid to stand my ground with a client who's not a good client. Because in the end, if they want to go somewhere else, well, honestly, I want them to go somewhere else, right? Sometimes I feel like we worry so much about what one unhappy person might do to hurt our reputation. But the reality is they don't. And even if they give you a bad review, Google allows you to respond to those reviews. And anybody who's reading reviews and sees your response and sees that it's legit, they usually can tell that this person was trying to pull a fast one. But here's what actually worries me. All the great clients who had a real issue and handled it with respect and kindness, it doesn't sit right with me to then reward bad behavior from bad clients. You know, from handling thousands and thousands of jobs in people's homes and over the years handling a lot of different complaints, I've noticed the ones that are legit, they really start almost the same way. They'll call, or we'll call them on a follow-up call just to make sure everything went well. And they'll usually say something along the lines of, hey, I don't really want to say anything because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. You have to practically pull it out of them. They're reluctant to tell you or to sound like they're complaining or to get a technician in trouble. They're really only telling you or calling because they know it's the right thing to do, and they know that if it were their company, they'd want to know. They're not fishing for something for free. And so as I'm listening to them, I could hear it. It's hard for them to make that call. And honestly, that's how most people are. That's how most of my friends are. That's how most of my family members are. That's how I am when it comes to something going wrong with the experience. I'm reluctant to call. I'm reluctant to say anything. One, because I don't want to come across like a complainer. But two, I don't want to get anybody in trouble. And honestly, I think it's hard for most people to voice a complaint because nobody likes to come across as a complainer. And we've all seen that person who is complaining and bellowing their demands and so that they can get something for free. And we don't want to be that person. So I think all legitimate complaints start off where they are just tiptoeing into it because they don't want to get anybody in trouble and they don't really want to cause problems. They just want the situation to be made right. And those kind of clients, when something is legitimately our fault and something went wrong, I'll go out of my way to make it right for them. And really, I think every one of my employees felt the same way. So look, my point is the customer is not always right, but they are always worth listening to, and so is your employee. I mean, as an owner, you can't choose sides. That's not your role, but you do have to discover what the truth is. Because trust, it's not the same as blind agreement. And if you're a small business owner, trust is what relationships are built on. That trust is your most powerful sales tool. And when people trust you, they're going to buy from you without hesitation. So, hey, if you've been listening to this and you're a small business owner, if you have just one thing to take away, let it be this. Next time a customer comes to you and they're unhappy, don't jump straight into fix-it mode. Listen to them first. Empathize with them. Hear them out as if they're really telling you the truth. And then give the emotions time to settle and facts time to rise. And then go into detective mode. Ask questions. And if something feels off, keep digging. You don't need to go into every fact and pull every fact out in the open, because sometimes you need to leave a little bit of room for people to save face. But eventually, you'll get enough of the story to make a really good decision and to figure out how to make things right. I always did. And here's the most important part. However you decide to handle this, make it a policy. Make sure everybody in the company knows exactly what to do when a customer's upset about something, when something didn't go as planned, something goes wrong, they're not happy with the work, whatever it is. Don't leave it to chance that your people are going to figure this out. Make it a policy so that no one has to guess. So the next time somebody says the customer's always right, like it's the final word, well, now you're going to know the real story. And you'll know the better rule, that right is always right. Give your customers the benefit of the doubt, but give your employees the benefit of the doubt too, and then go find the truth. Well, that's a mini episode, and Luke's story is coming up in a couple weeks, and it is a good one. It's a story about a business that's been built over 4 generations through one family. That's a business that's built to last, so you're not going to want to miss that. All right, thanks for listening to another episode of Locally Owned, and build a business worth building so that you can live a life worth living.